Hello, Evan Carlson.
Hello, Darren Stevens.
It's time to record another poetry podcast. This is the Poetic Turn. That's the name of the podcast. You can find us where you get podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, places like that. We're also at thepoeticturn.com. And turn is spelled Turn, even though our logo is of an Arctic tern. But don't be confused by that. It's just us being particularly clever. We're two clever gentlemen, Evan.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed.
Thank you for joining us, everybody. Thank you. Good to see you, as always, Evan. And Evan is generally our content guy for the Poetic Turn, and he dug way deep for something really strange and obscure. It's going to be really off-putting to a lot of our audience. To be very disturbing, I'm sure.
A deep
Actually,
cut. A deep cut.
it's a deep cut. It's actually one of the most famous poems in English ever written, but there are different aspects of this poem, and I was going to share those with us. What is a poem, Evan?
What is a poem?
No, what is this poem? What poem are we doing?
You see, that's a harder question to answer.
Oh,
Than
that's
what
a
is this
much
poem?
harder question. We'd have to have one of those 9-hour podcasts that people listen to.
What is a poem? Well, this poem is "The Road Not Taken" by Robert Frost, which
Pretty
I believe
famous.
it is a poem.
It is a poem. It's pretty famous. I was singing before we got started. I was singing a little bit. This poem, the words from this poem were used in a song I sang with a choir many years ago when I was in high school, and they used the words to "The Road Not Taken" for that musical piece, and so I was very familiar with it from that. But also, just it's a very very famous poem, very lovely famous poem, and the way we do it here at the Poetic Turn, we read the poem, then we talk about it, and then we read it again towards the end of our time together. And so, The Road Not Taken by Robert Frost. Evan, would you like to give a pass at it?
I'd love to. Alrighty. The Road Not Taken. Two roads diverged in a yellow wood, and sorry I could not travel both, and be one traveler. Long I stood, and looked down one as far as I could, to where it bent in the undergrowth. Then took the other, as just as fair, and having perhaps the better claim, because it was grassy and wanted wear, though as for that, the passing there had worn them really about the same. And both that morning equally lay, in leaves no step had trodden black. Oh, I kept the first for another day. Yet, knowing how way leads on to way, I doubted if I should ever come back. I shall be telling this with a sigh, somewhere ages and ages hence. Two roads diverged in a wood, and I took the one less traveled by, and that has made all the difference.
Great, great poem. A lot of thoughts about a poem like that. Whenever you read it, I'm sure if people have come to the Poetic Turn, this podcast, they're familiar with the name Robert Frost. Likely, they might even be familiar with this poem. It's that famous. It's just if you care about poetry at all, if you've heard poetry, if you studied poetry in school, you might have come across the road. Let's see. I just want to make sure I say the title right. Come across "The Road Not Taken" by Robert Frost. We're about being correct here on the Poetic Turn. So it seems like it has a straightforward kind of meaning. Well, I could have gone that way. I could have gone that way. There was a movie, Sliding Doors, years ago. But I could have taken this path. My life could have gone this way. String theory. We maybe live amongst any number of uncounted possibilities which way our lives could go, or what present we're inhabiting. Well, you had an interesting thought about this poem, maybe something that's a little different than what people usually think.
Yeah, well, this poem, I used to not like it very much. I used to think it was just, it's got that last two lines. I took the one less traveled by, and that has made all the difference. If somebody's got a tattoo of a poem, it's probably those two lines. And it just maybe it was because it was popular, maybe it was because it felt a little sappy, but
Uh-huh.
I just didn't enjoy it. And then one day in class, I got an assignment to write. This was in a comedic writing class. I got an
Oh,
assignment to write a satire of a poem.
like a spoof. A parody, a
Yeah,
spoof.
a spoof of a poem. Yeah, and so I was like, you know what, I'll do this poem because I really don't like it, and I
It deserves mocking.
exactly. But what happened was when I was trying to satirize this, I actually had to read it really closely, and what I noticed was that the two paths are the exact same.
Huh. Wait a
And
minute.
so when I was reading it closely, I was like, wait a second. At the end, it says, I took the one less traveled by. But throughout the poem, it says, then took the other as just as fair. It says the other was just as fair. But then it says maybe it was grassy, but really, they're about the same. It had worn them really about the same. And both that morning equally lay. So there's all these parts in it that
Yeah.
actually say these look exactly the same. These are the same things. And so I started being like, wait a second. That's not how I normally would think about this poem, is that these are the same, but then at the end he says, I took the one less traveled by. But neither of them are less traveled by.
Yeah.
And so I did some digging into this, and apparently Robert Frost wrote this as a joke to his friend, who would always,
Wow.
they would go on walks and they'd look around, and he would never be able to decide which way. But he was joking about how later, he says, I took the one that was this, and that really was the reason why we made it this way. And it's sort of, I realized, a joke about how we do something in life, and we look back on it and we think that we had some way of knowing that those random choices we made led us to where we are. And so it now
And
I think of it.
we didn't really have any way of knowing.
Yeah, and so the way I read it now in my head is I picture Andy Griffith reading it. And I picture him, at a bar or something, I'll be telling with a sigh somewhere ages and ages hence, talking about this story from long ago that really didn't happen, but that he's convinced himself is exactly why he's there now. And so apparently Robert Frost read this poem to this group of college students, and he was perplexed when all of them sort of went, oh, wow, yeah, that's great. Because he thought they'd all laugh.
Oh, interesting. You thought they would get the joke, but
Yeah, yeah,
to them and to most readers, to thousands, millions of readers since, it just straightforward. And boy, I could have gone this way, I could have gone that way, and that has made all the difference in my life. When Frost himself says, really, really, did you really think there'd be that kind of difference? Actually, not
well,
really.
because you can picture the guy who says, I took the road less traveled by, and that made all the difference.
Yeah.
Talking to somebody, trying to mentor them, maybe even when he didn't know what in the world he was doing.
That is funny. That is funny. So it was sappy in his mind too. We're like, oh, no one's going to believe this is,
Yeah.
everyone's going to get the joke just like I do, having written it.
But it turns out there's a book written that I haven't read it, but it's called like The Most Misunderstood Poem in America. And it's all about this because this has become sort of a phenomenon and a piece of advice to, take the road less traveled. Like that's a sort of a common thing that people might say to somebody.
I'm sure there are many travel books with that title, for example. Oh,
Yeah.
you don't want to go to Paris or London or dumb places everybody's been, or Chicago to Blues Fest. And you want to go off the beaten path. You want to do something that's daring, difficult, where you have to climb up a sheer rock face and your hands are bloody. And that's a real experience, Evan, to really have that kind of. No, that's nonsense.
But even sort of the reading of the poem that I go with now, there still is sort of a thing that says, even if you do the same thing that everybody else does, we make it our own, and we're still able to read in some kind of meaning into it.
Yeah.
I see it as like it. I do see the joke of it, but I also think that there's something beautiful about we're able to create our own meaning even when there is none there.
That's right. I mean, for example, one example is, are there other poetry podcasts? Of course there are. There are many, many other poetry podcasts, or writing a book about Dalmatians or whatever. man, there's so many books about Dalmatians. Why should I write one? Because your
Yeah.
book about Dalmatians will be different. Our poetry podcast is different than other poetry podcasts. Our unique sensibility, our
Yeah.
what we bring to it, our experiences. I read years ago that when you eat at a restaurant, you should get something that you know you like. Because
Mm-hmm.
if you get something different all the time, you won't be as satisfied. You'll have more chances to be satisfied with what you order in a restaurant if you order something that you pretty much know you like. And so
Yeah.
I've let that guide me sometimes. Well, I'd really, I haven't had the chicken paprikash. I've always had this, but no, maybe I'll try the chicken paprikash this time because I usually get the stroganoff. No, no, no. I always like the stroganoff. Just go ahead and get the stroganoff. You know you'll love it. Yeah. So
Yeah.
restaurant
Well,
choices.
and as we're talking now, I just glanced at the title of this poem, and it's "The Road Not Taken," and so that sort of implies that this is really about the road that he did not take.
So how would he know?
Yeah. He doesn't know anything about it. How would you know if you order the thing that if you don't order that other thing,
I might
what the
find a new
difference
thing that
is?
I like best. It might be the new
Yeah.
thing that I like the best. Yeah.
But by ordering what you did, you could still say, I ordered this and it was terrific. When I come back here, I'll order the other thing. But
Yeah.
way leads unto way, and you might never
I
go back there.
might never be back in that Cambodian restaurant again. So
Yeah.
yeah. Or that the Russian tea
Yeah.
time in Chicago. Well, of course in Chicago, and I'm sitting in a place in the West Loop where there are thousands of restaurants about 10 minutes away. And Evan is in a different place in Chicago. This is we're broadcasting, we're recording in Chicago, which is a great town for many, many reasons. It does get cold at
Hmm.
times, and
Oh, yeah.
Evan's from the South, but there are just so many choices. And so that's one of the great things about that is you can make many, many choices, and you'll have plenty of times to try something you've never tried before that you might like. So
Yeah.
many,
Yeah.
many roads to take.
And all the dishes and things to try might be just about the same, so it's worth just picking. It's worth
Yeah,
just
yeah.
making up your mind and doing something.
And as your dad might say, you know what? They're all going to end. All that food's going to end up at the same place anyway. So yeah,
Yeah.
this is.
No, it's true. It's true. But yeah,
But
what's that?
that's. I'm sorry, we're interrupting each other, and I'll do this. I'll fix that later. What were you going to say?
I don't know that I had anything.
Okay. So yeah, the road not taken. So one way is that very common way of looking at this. If I'd only gone this way, my life would have been so different if I'd. But
Yeah.
but maybe not. And that's so interesting, Evan. Your point about the fact that yeah, how can you write a poem about the road not taken when you never took it?
Yeah.
Well,
Well, and I find it so fascinating that they're equally laid before you. And really, his frustration was that his friend would never pick which direction to go, and we get so hung up on the choice. But really, just making the choice was what mattered.
so Robert Frost's friend, you mean?
Yeah, Robert Frost's friend in real life, and obviously, poems don't have to only be based in reality. But I've found that Robert Frost is way funnier than I expect. When I start reading his poetry, sometimes it gets a little boring. But then, really, the greatest trick I learned was to just read it in Andy Griffith's voice
Ah.
in my head.
And for those who don't know, if we have some younger listeners on here, Andy Griffiths is this homespun, had this homespun style. He was the main guy in the Andy Griffiths Show, a show from the '60s, this sitcom from the '60s, and he had this kind of aw shucks, gee whiz kind of style. And he had a little boy, and he raised the little boy
Yeah,
and taught him about life and yeah. So yeah, that's a good way to have it. Andy Griffith
yeah,
kind of two roads diverge to
and
the yellow.
with sort of a little bit of a grin almost, where he's kind of holding something back from you. But there's that little grin in all these poems that I didn't pick up until I realized that about this, and then I started reading all his poems very differently.
Huh. And the Andy Griffith Show, they're from a town, and that town was in North Carolina.
Yes, indeed, Mayberry, North Carolina.
And you're from North Carolina, right?
I am. Yeah, I've been to. various Andy Griffith related sites. In fact, he went to UNC Chapel Hill, a great university. A lot of my family has gone there or worked there. And he performed in the Lost Colony play, which is an outdoor drama.
The drama,
The
yeah.
oldest running outdoor drama in America, maybe the world. I don't know. He was in that. He was on Broadway. So he's done lots. He did lots of stuff.
He did lots of stuff and amazing. There's a movie called The Face in the Crowd.
One is so good.
So good. And Andy Griffith on the Andy Griffith Show, again, this homespun guy, you just love him. And then later on, he played Matlock, of course, and just this great guy, this lovely man. And in the movie, The Face in the Crowd, he is pure evil. And we're not going to talk about any modern political personality to whom he might be compared. We're not going to, this podcast doesn't do that. But he was pure evil in that movie. And if you love Andy Griffith and you like good old movies, man, oh man, that's a good one to see. We'll put a link we'll put a link to things in the show notes. We'll put a link to more about that movie in the show notes.
Yeah, and that'll help you with poetry because you'll learn how to use his voice.
Well, it might be time for me to read the poem, Evan. Or shall we go through it again and hear it again?
Yeah.
All right. Let me give my my best version of this famous poem that maybe is completely understood or maybe not understood, but have a different kind of feeling about it now. The poem is The Road Not Taken by Robert Frost. Two roads diverged in a yellow wood, and sorry I could not travel both, and be one traveler long I stood, and looked down one as far as I could to where it bent in the undergrowth. Then took the other as just as fair, and having perhaps the better claim, because it was grassy and wanted wear. Though as for that, the passing there had warned them really about the same. And both that morning equally lay in leaves no step had trodden black. I kept the first for another day. Yet knowing how way leads on to way, I doubted if I should ever come back. I shall be telling this with a sigh, somewhere ages and ages hence. Two roads diverged in a wood, and I took the one less traveled by, and that has made all the difference. Or not.
Or not. Well, that's the thing. In this reading, it was nice because I could picture, somebody saying, maybe I want the burger. No, I want the wrap. No, I want the burger. No, you know what? I'll get the wrap next time. I'll get the burger now. And then later that night, it's really good I got the burger because that one, it really was the right choice.
Life is filled with choices. Life is filled with so many choices.
Yeah.
Well, another great suggestion, Evan. I appreciate you putting that poem forward and maybe a different thoughts about the road less traveled for our listeners.
Yes. And next week we'll be talking with Professor Mike Tooney.
Oh, wonderful. I've heard a lot about Professor Tooney, and he's had a large influence on Evan and his understanding of poetry and his passion for poetry. And I look forward to that conversation. I hope our audience is looking forward to it as well. I've been so impressed with his poetry, and it'll be tremendous to have him on the Poetic Turn. So thank you in advance, Evan, for securing Professor Tooney to be on our show.
Absolutely.
Well, good talking to you as always, Evan. Thank you so much. And
thank you.
And for our audience, if you haven't done so already, please like, share, give us a review on Apple Podcasts. And Evan and I will be back with a Poetic Turn next time. We'll see you then, Evan.
See you.